The alarm bells echoed through the corridors of Aegis Prime, the massive space station that orbited Earth's moon. Admiral Park Woo-jin was drinking his morning coffee when the emergency alert broke through the usual hum of activity. Something was happening in the main command center, and it was big enough to wake up the entire station. Park set down his cup and walked quickly through the metal hallways. The station had been humanity's first real military outpost in space, built only 5 years ago when Earth finally had the technology to defend itself properly. Now it served as the command center for all human space operations. The Admiral had been running this place for 2 years, and he had never seen his crew this excited. When he entered the command center, Captain Lee Hyun-woo was already there, staring at something floating in the middle of the room. It was a crystal about the size of a human head, glowing with soft blue light. The thing had just appeared out of nowhere, according to the duty officer. No ship had delivered it. No transport had brought it. It had simply materialized in their most secure area. "Sir, we've never seen anything like this," Lee said as Park approached. "It appeared exactly 15 minutes ago. Our sensors can't figure out what it's made of, and it's not showing up on any of our scans as dangerous." Park walked around the crystal, studying it from different angles. The surface was perfectly smooth like glass, but it seemed to have depth that went on forever. Tiny lights moved inside it like stars in a miniature galaxy. Whatever this thing was, it was far beyond human technology. "Any ideas about what it wants?" Park asked. "We think it's a message system, sir. Dr. Kim So-ra is on her way up from the research level to take a look." As if summoned by her name, the doors opened, and Dr. Kim So-ra walked in. She was the station's expert on alien life and technology, one of the few humans who had studied the strange artifacts that occasionally drifted into human space. She took one look at the crystal and her face went pale. "This is Council technology," she said quietly. "I've seen descriptions of these message pods in the old files. They only use them for the most important communications. The Galactic Council was something humans had heard about, but never directly encountered. From what little they knew, it was a group of older alien species that controlled most of the galaxy. They had been around for thousands of years, managing trade routes and keeping peace between different worlds. Humans had been expanding into space for only 20 years, and so far they had been too small to attract the Council's attention. "Can we open it?" Park asked. Dr. Kim nodded. "The files say they respond to mental intent. You just have to want to see the message." Park stepped closer to the crystal and focused his thoughts on opening it. The crystal suddenly flared with bright light, and then a hologram appeared above it. The image was so clear and detailed that it looked like real people were standing in the room. The central figure was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large black eyes. Its voice was smooth and cold when it spoke. "I am Ambassador Velthara of the Galactic Council. This message is directed to the leadership of the species known as humans." Around the ambassador stood other alien figures. Park could see at least 6 different species, all of them looking serious and stern. Their technology was obviously advanced. The hologram was better than anything humans had ever created. "Your species has been expanding beyond your home system for 20 standard years. Initially, this was deemed acceptable for a developing civilization. However, your recent activities have caused concern among the Council membership." Park felt his stomach tighten. This didn't sound like a friendly introduction. "Your military buildup, your aggressive expansion, and your rapid technological advancement have been noted. The Council has decided that humanity poses a potential threat to galactic stability. Therefore, we are issuing this final warning." The word "final" hung in the air like a threat. Dr. Kim was taking notes on her tablet, her fingers moving quickly across the screen. "You have 30 standard galactic days to comply with the following demands." The ambassador continued. "First, all human military vessels must be recalled to your home system. Second, all human colonies beyond your solar system must be abandoned. Third, all human military technology must be surrendered to Council oversight. Fourth, humanity must accept Council governance and submit to our authority." Park felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his expression calm. Around him, his officers were getting tense. Captain Lee's hand had moved closer to his sidearm, even though there was nothing to shoot. "Failure to comply with these demands will result in enforcement action by the Council fleet. We have already positioned ships near your system. Do not mistake our patience for weakness. We have maintained galactic peace for over 3,000 years by dealing firmly with species that threaten that peace. The ambassador paused, and for a moment its black eyes seemed to look directly at Park. You have 30 days. Use them wisely. The hologram faded and the crystal went dark. The command center was silent for several long seconds. Then everyone started talking at once. Sir, we're picking up movement at the edge of the system, the sensor operator called out. Long-range scans show at least 12 large ships that weren't there yesterday. How large? Park asked. Each one is bigger than our biggest battleship, sir, and there might be more we can't see. Captain Lee stepped closer to Park. Sir, what are your orders? Park looked around the command center. His people were scared, but they were also angry. Humans had spent 20 years building their civilization in space. They had colonies on 6 different worlds now, with millions of people living peaceful lives. The idea of abandoning all of that because some alien council said so was unthinkable. Get me a direct line to Earth Command, Park said. Priority Alpha. I need to speak with President Choi immediately. While the communications officer worked on the connection, Dr. Kim approached Park with her tablet. Sir, I've been thinking about what that ambassador said. They called this a final warning. That suggests they've given us warnings before, have they? Not directly. But looking back at some of the strange incidents over the past few years, ships that disappeared, colonies that went quiet and then came back online with no memory of what happened, I think the Council has been watching us and maybe even interfering with us for a while. Park nodded grimly. What else do you know about them? Not much that's reliable. The files suggest they're old, powerful, and used to getting their way. They apparently believe that younger species are naturally violent and need to be controlled. From their perspective, we probably look like dangerous children playing with weapons. The communications officer signaled that the connection to Earth was ready. President Choi Min-ho appeared on the main screen looking tired. It was late at night in his time zone, but he had obviously been waiting for this call. Admiral Park, the president said. I assume this is about our uninvited visitors? Yes, sir. We've received what they call a final warning. They want us to abandon everything we've built and submit to their authority. President Choi was quiet for a moment. What's your assessment of their military capabilities? Unknown, sir, but probably significant. They have at least 12 ships at the edge of our system, and each one is larger than anything we have. Their technology is clearly more advanced than ours. I see. The president paused again. Admiral, I want you to begin immediate preparations for a full military alert. Bring all our forces to readiness, but don't make any aggressive moves yet. I'm calling an emergency session of the Global Defense Coalition. We'll have an answer for the Council soon. The connection ended, leaving Park alone with his thoughts. 30 days to give up everything humanity had worked for. 30 days to decide whether to fight or surrender. He looked around at his officers, seeing the same determination in their faces that he felt in his own heart. Captain Lee, he said finally, begin combat preparations. All leaves are canceled, all ships are to return to base immediately. I want every weapon system checked and every defense grid online. Yes, sir. What do we tell the crews? Park walked to the window that looked out at Earth, hanging blue and beautiful in the darkness of space. Somewhere down there, leaders were making decisions that would affect the future of the entire human race. Whatever they decided, Park knew one thing for certain. Humanity would not go quietly into the night. Tell them to get ready, he said. We're about to find out what we're really made of. Commander Ryu Minjai stood on the bridge of the eclipse, watching the stars shift in ways that should have been impossible. 3 days ago, his ship had been the first to receive the new phase shift technology that Dr. Han's team had developed. Now the eclipse was sliding through space like a ghost, invisible to every sensor system the Council possessed. Sir, we're approaching the Council monitoring station, reported Lieutenant Kang Soo-jin from the navigation console. They still don't know we're here. Ryu nodded, studying the alien structure on his main screen. The monitoring station was huge, bigger than most human cities, with sensor arrays that stretched out like metal wings. It had been watching human space for months, recording every ship movement and transmission. The Council thought they knew everything about humanity's capabilities. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Target their main communication array, Ryu ordered. 1 precise shot, then we phase out immediately. The eclipse fired a single beam of energy that struck the station's communication center. The shot was perfectly aimed, destroying only the parts needed to silence the station without killing anyone inside. Before the aliens could even understand what had happened, the eclipse shifted back into phase space and disappeared. "Station neutralized, sir," reported the weapons officer. "They're cut off from the Council network." This was happening all across the border between human and Council space. Human ships were appearing out of nowhere, striking Council installations with surgical precision, then vanishing before any response could be organized. The Council's spy network was being systematically dismantled. Back on Aegis Prime, Admiral Park Woo-jin was coordinating the largest intelligence operation in human history. The main command center had been transformed into a war room, with dozens of screens showing the positions of human and Council forces throughout the galaxy. "Sir, we've just received confirmation from the Phantom," Captain Lee Hyun-woo reported. "The Council supply depot at Rigel has been neutralized. No casualties, but their logistics network in that sector is now offline." Dr. Kim So-ra looked up from her research station. "Admiral, I'm seeing interesting patterns in the Council's response to our attacks. They're not adapting their tactics at all. They're just sending more ships to guard their remaining facilities." "What does that tell us?" Park asked. "They've never faced an enemy that fights like this before. Their standard response to any threat is overwhelming force. They don't know how to deal with an opponent they can't see or predict." On the Council flagship Dominion, Counselor Thex Moran was indeed struggling to understand what was happening. The bridge was filled with reports of human attacks across Council space, but none of it made sense according to their understanding of human capabilities. "How are they getting past our sensor networks?" Thex Moran demanded of his tactical officer. "Our monitoring shows that most of the human fleet is still in their home system." "Unknown, sir. The attacks appear to be coming from ships that don't exist on any of our scans. Some of our scientists believe the humans have developed stealth technology far beyond what we thought possible for such a young species." Thex Moran's multiple eyes narrowed. The Council had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, by knowing exactly what every species was capable of. The idea that primitive humans could surprise them was both impossible and terrifying. Meanwhile, on Earth, Intelligence Officer Oh Seung-hwan was running an operation that would have impressed the greatest spies in history. For the past 2 weeks, human colonies had been appearing to evacuate in panic. Council observers reported millions of humans fleeing their outer worlds and returning to Earth in obvious terror. What the Council didn't know was that the evacuated humans were actually being relocated to hidden bases that existed in phase space, completely invisible to normal sensors. The colonies that appeared abandoned were actually being reinforced with new defensive systems and hidden weapons. "The Council believes we're retreating in fear," Oh reported to President Choi during their daily briefing. "Their agents are sending reports about human panic and desperate attempts to hide behind Earth's defenses." "Perfect," President Choi replied. "Let them think we're afraid. When the time comes, they'll learn the difference between fear and preparation." Dr. Kim So-ra had been working around the clock on another crucial discovery. Her study of the Council species had revealed something important about how they communicated and made decisions. Most Council species use chemical signals and pheromones as part of their communication, making them vulnerable to a specific type of psychological warfare. "Admiral," she said as she entered Park's office, "I think I've found a way to disrupt their command structure without firing a shot." She activated her tablet, showing Park detailed biological scans of various Council species. They rely heavily on chemical communication. Fear pheromones, authority markers, stress indicators. If we can flood their ships with the right chemical signals, we can make their crews unable to function effectively. "You mean we can make them too scared to fight?" "Not scared exactly, but confused and unable to coordinate. It would be like trying to run a military operation while everyone is speaking different languages and no one can understand their orders." Park smiled grimly. "Add that to our list of surprises for the Council." Professor Nam Hee-jin had been analyzing captured Council technology with a team of human engineers. Her findings were almost too good to believe. The Council's weapons and defenses were incredibly powerful, but they were also inflexible and predictable. "Their technology is built for fighting traditional wars," she explained to General Yang during a secure video call. "Big fleets meeting in open space, conventional tactics, overwhelming firepower. They've never had to design systems to fight an enemy that can appear anywhere at any time." "What are their main weaknesses?" Yang asked. "Their ships are powerful but slow to adapt. Their weapon systems are designed to destroy large targets, not small, fast-moving ones. And most importantly, Their command structure is centralized. If we can disrupt their communications, their entire fleet becomes much less effective. As the 30-day deadline approached, the Council's confidence was beginning to crack. Admiral Velkoth, commander of the Council fleet, was receiving reports that made no sense. Human ships were appearing throughout Council space, but somehow the main human fleet appeared to still be defending Earth. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "we're detecting massive energy signatures from the human home system. It appears they're powering up weapons and defenses far beyond what we thought they possessed." Velkoth studied the tactical displays with growing unease. The humans were supposed to be a primitive species with limited technology. The reports he was receiving suggested they had capabilities that rivaled or exceeded Council technology in some areas. "What about the evacuations from their colonies?" "Continuing as expected, sir. Most human worlds appear to be abandoned or lightly defended. However, we're having difficulty getting detailed scans of the planets themselves. What the Council couldn't see was that engineer Baejun Ho and his teams had been working around the clock to implement Dr. Han's technology into practical applications. Human colonies that appeared defenseless were actually protected by phase shift shields that made them nearly invisible. Weapons platforms that existed partially outside normal space were ready to appear instantly when needed. The most ambitious part of the human plan was being coordinated by Fleet Admiral Park from Aegis Prime. For weeks, human ships had been moving into position throughout Council space, using phase shift technology to remain undetected. When the time came, the Council would find themselves facing human forces in places they never expected. Status report. Park requested during the final briefing before the deadline. "All phase shift equipped ships are in position," Captain Lee reported. "The Council's monitoring network has been reduced by 70%. Their supply lines are disrupted across 6 sectors. Intelligence networks? Oh Sung-hwan reports that Council agents still believe we're in full retreat," Dr. Kim added. "They expect to find a cowering Earth when they arrive." Technological preparations? "All systems are online," confirmed Dr. Han via secure link. "We're ready to demonstrate capabilities the Council cannot even imagine." Admiral Park looked out at the stars, knowing that in less than 3 days, the Council fleet would arrive expecting to accept humanity's surrender. Instead, they would discover that humanity had spent 30 days preparing not for surrender, but for a war unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Send word to all units," Park ordered. "Operation Prometheus is authorized. It's time to show the Council what humans are really capable of." The trap was set. The Council was coming to collect what they thought was a defeated enemy. They had no idea they were flying into the most carefully planned ambush in galactic history. The emergency meeting room in Geneva was filled with tension. President Choi Min-ho sat at the head of the long table, looking at the faces of humanity's most important leaders. General Yang Tai-min of the Space Marine Corps was there, his uniform crisp despite being called from sleep only hours ago. Admiral Sung Ji-hai had arrived from the Deep Space Fleet headquarters, still wearing her flight suit from the rush trip to Earth. Around the table sat the heads of every major spacefaring nation, along with the directors of humanity's most important military and scientific programs. The room's large screen showed maps of human space, with red dots marking the Council ships that had appeared at the system's edge. "Ladies and gentlemen," President Choi began, "we all know why we're here. The Galactic Council has given us 30 days to abandon everything we've built in space and submit to their rule. I want to hear your thoughts." General Yang was the first to speak. "Mr. President, with respect, there's nothing to discuss. We don't negotiate with threats. If they want our colonies, they'll have to take them." Admiral Sung nodded in agreement. "Our intelligence suggests the Council has never faced serious resistance before. They're used to younger species simply giving up when threatened. They might not be prepared for a real fight. But can we win such a fight?" asked Dr. Park Na-un, the Director of Colonial Affairs. "Their ships are larger than ours and their technology is more advanced. We could be sending millions of people to their deaths?" President Choi held up his hand for silence. "Before we make any decisions, I want everyone to hear what Dr. Han Boram has to say. She's been working on something that might change our options." Dr. Han Boram stood up from her seat near the end of the table. She was a small woman with tired eyes, but when she spoke, everyone listened. She was the head of the Theoretical Physics Division and one of the smartest people alive. "For the past 3 years," Dr. Han began, "my team has been working on Project Prometheus. It started as basic research into quantum mechanics, but we've made some breakthroughs that even I didn't think were possible." She pressed a button on her tablet, and the room's screens changed to show complex mathematical equations and diagrams. "We've found a way to manipulate space-time on a practical level. Not just theory anymore, but real technology that we can build and use." General Yang leaned forward. "What kind of technology?" "Several kinds. Phase shift drives that can make our ships invisible to most sensors, quantum communication systems that work instantly across any distance, and something we call reality anchors that can disrupt other advanced technologies." The room was quiet as everyone tried to understand what she was saying. Admiral Sung was the first to catch on. "You're talking about stealth technology that could hide our entire fleet?" "Better than that," Dr. Han replied. "We're talking about technology that could make us appear anywhere we want, any time we want, without warning. The Council's sensors are advanced, but they're based on conventional physics. Our new systems work outside those rules." President Choi smiled for the first time since the meeting began. "How long would it take to install this technology on our ships?" "Most of the preparations are already done, sir. We've been secretly upgrading our fleet for months. We expected that something like this might happen eventually." "What do you mean?" asked Dr. Park. Dr. Han's expression became serious. "We've been monitoring strange signals from beyond our space for over a year. Signs that someone was watching us, studying us. We knew that first contact would probably not be friendly." At that moment, the room's main door opened and Captain Lim Da-un walked in. She was still wearing her ship's uniform, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. President Choi gestured for her to join them. "Captain Lim has just returned from a reconnaissance mission beyond our borders," the president explained. "Her findings are the reason we're all here tonight." Captain Lim moved to the front of the room and activated her own presentation. The screens now showed images of alien worlds and space stations. 3 weeks ago, the stealth ship Shadow Dancer was sent to investigate Council space. What we found was not what we expected. The first image showed a beautiful planet with blue oceans and green continents. "This is Kepler 442b. It was inhabited by a species called the Etherans. They had developed spaceflight about 50 years ago and were building their first colonies." She clicked to the next image, showing the same planet covered in gray ash. "This is what it looks like now. The Council destroyed the entire civilization because they were advancing too quickly." Gasps came from around the table. The next several images showed similar devastation on other worlds. "We found evidence of at least 8 species that were completely wiped out by the Council in the past century. Not conquered or enslaved. Completely eliminated." General Yang's face was hard as stone. "How many people are we talking about?" "Billions, sir. The Council doesn't just want to control younger species. They want to prevent any species from becoming strong enough to challenge them. They kill entire civilizations to maintain their power." The room was silent as everyone absorbed this information. Finally, President Choi spoke. "Captain, did you find any survivors from these worlds?" "Yes, sir. We made contact with several species that are hiding in the outer regions of Council space. They've been secretly working together, hoping that someday a species would be strong enough to help them fight back." Admiral Sung leaned back in her chair. "So we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every species the Council has oppressed." "That's correct," Captain Lim replied. "And some of these species have been sharing technology with each other in secret. They know things about Council weaknesses that could help us." Dr. Han stepped forward again. "Which brings me to the final part of Project Prometheus. We haven't just been developing new technology. We've been preparing for a specific kind of war." "What do you mean?" President Choi asked. "The Council fights using overwhelming force and intimidation. They show up with big fleets and expect their enemies to surrender. They've never had to fight a war against an enemy that refuses to give up and can strike back from unexpected directions." She brought up new diagrams showing fleet movements and battle plans. "Our strategy isn't to meet them in direct battle. It's to make them realize that controlling humanity would cost more than it's worth. We're going to fight a war of precision strikes, stealth attacks, and psychological pressure." General Yang was studying the battle plans with interest. "This could work. If we can't match their firepower, we make our own rules for how the war is fought." "Exactly," Dr. Han said. "By the time they figure out how to counter our tactics, we'll have moved on to new ones. The key is to stay ahead of their ability to adapt." President Choi stood up and walked to the window overlooking the city. Geneva was quiet at this late hour, but he could see lights in windows where people were staying up late, probably watching the news about the alien ultimatum. "So our choice is clear. he said without turning around. We can surrender and hope the Council allows us to survive. Or we can fight and try to free not just ourselves but every oppressed species in the galaxy. There's no choice at all, Admiral Sung said firmly. We fight. Agreed, said General Yang, but we need to be smart about it. If we're going to war with the most powerful force in the galaxy, we need every advantage we can get. Dr. Han nodded. That's why we've spent 3 years preparing. The Council thinks they're dealing with primitive humans who just learned to build spaceships. They have no idea what we're actually capable of. President Choi turned back to face the room. Very well. Dr. Han, I'm giving you unlimited resources to complete Project Prometheus. General Yang. Begin mobilizing all our forces, but keep it quiet. We don't want the Council to know what we're planning until it's too late. What about the colonies? Asked Dr. Park. The Council will expect us to start evacuating them. We'll evacuate them, the President replied with a cold smile. But not in the way the Council expects. Captain Lim, I want you to coordinate with our colony administrators. Make it look like we're panicking and pulling people back to Earth, but actually move them to secure locations the Council can't find. Captain Lim saluted. Yes, sir. The Shadow Dancer can help transport key personnel to hidden bases. President Choi looked around the table one more time. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 30 days to prepare for the most important war in human history, not just for our survival, but for the future of freedom in this galaxy. The Council expects us to submit like frightened children. He paused and his voice became as cold as space itself. They're about to learn that they've made a terrible mistake. Admiral Velkoth stood on the bridge of his flagship as the Council Armada dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. Behind him stretched the most powerful fleet the Council had assembled in centuries. 200 ships of various sizes, each one capable of destroying entire cities. The combined firepower could crack planets. Begin scanning the system, Velkoth ordered. I want to know the position of every human ship and defense platform. The tactical officer worked at his console for several minutes before looking up with confusion. Sir, the system appears to be nearly empty. We're detecting minimal energy signatures from the human space stations. Most of their fleet seems to have withdrawn to Earth orbit. Velkoth nodded with satisfaction. As expected, the primitives are cowering behind their homeworld, hoping we'll show mercy. He activated the fleet communication system. All ships advance to Earth. Maintain attack formation but do not fire unless they resist. As the Council fleet moved deeper into the solar system, Earth hung silent and dark ahead of them. The human space stations that should have been bustling with activity showed only minimal power signatures. The orbital defense platforms that intelligence reported were offline or abandoned. Sir, the communications officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. Put it on the main screen. The hologram that appeared showed President Choi Min-ho standing in what looked like a simple office. He was alone, wearing a plain suit, looking calm and composed. Nothing about his appearance suggested the leader of a species facing extinction. I am President Choi of the United Earth Government, he said in a steady voice. I believe you have come for our surrender. Velkoth smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Indeed, you have had 30 days to consider our demands. I trust you have made the wise choice. President Choi was quiet for a moment, as if considering his words carefully. When he spoke again, his voice was even colder than before. Admiral, you threatened our children. You demanded our submission. You have made a grave error in judgment. Before Velkoth could respond, something impossible happened. Ships began appearing around the Council fleet. Not approaching from a distance, but materializing out of empty space as if they had been invisible. Dozens of human vessels, then hundreds, surrounding the entire Council Armada in perfect formation. What is this? Velkoth demanded. How are they doing this? His tactical officer was frantically working at his console. Sir, these ships weren't there seconds ago. They just appeared. Our sensors show no indication of how they arrived. Admiral Park Woo-jin's voice came over the communication system from his flagship Aegis Prime. Council fleet, you are surrounded. Power down your weapons and prepare to receive instructions. Velkoth snarled. You dare threaten us? We outnumber your primitive vessels 2 to 1. Do you? Park's voice remained calm. I suggest you check your sensors again. More human ships were appearing every second. The space around Earth was filling with vessels that seemed to phase in and out of reality. Some appeared to be in multiple places at once. Others looked normal but registered on sensors as being made of impossible materials. Sir? The tactical officer called out, his voice filled with panic. Our weapon systems are not responding. Something is interfering with our targeting computers. Across the Council fleet, the same problem was occurring. Ships that had been powerful enough to destroy worlds suddenly found their weapons offline. Their shields flickered and failed. Their communication systems worked only on frequencies that the humans allowed. Dr. Han Boram's voice joined the conversation from her position on the research station New Horizon. Council forces, your technology is currently being disrupted by quantum interference patterns. Your weapons and defenses will remain offline as long as we maintain these fields. This is impossible, Velkoth said. Your species has only been in space for 20 years. You cannot possess technology more advanced than ours. You're right, came another voice. This one belonged to Director Zhang Minsuk of Human Intelligence. We don't have technology more advanced than yours. We have technology different from yours. You've spent 3,000 years perfecting ways to fight conventional wars. We've spent 30 days learning how to fight you. Suddenly, every screen on every council ship activated at once. What they saw made many of the alien crews step back in shock. The screens showed detailed recordings of council black sites, secret prisons where entire species had been tortured and experimented on. They showed records of the genocide of dozens of civilizations. They showed council leaders discussing the elimination of promising species with the same casual tone they might use to talk about the weather. For the past 3 months, Director Zhang continued, human intelligence operatives have been inside council space. We have been watching you, recording you, documenting your crimes against every living species in the galaxy. The recordings were undeniable. Council ships carrying weapons designed specifically to sterilize planets. Council scientists conducting horrific experiments on captured beings. Council administrators discussing which species to eliminate next based on their potential threat to council power. Velkoth watched the evidence of his civilization's crimes with growing horror. How did you get these recordings? Our security is perfect. Your security is designed to stop conventional spies, came a new voice. Captain Ko Yonsu of the stealth ship Silent Arrow spoke from somewhere near the council fleet. It doesn't work against people who can walk through walls. More human ships continued to appear around the council fleet. Some materialized directly between council vessels, forcing them to move or risk collision. Others appeared to be occupying the same space as asteroids or space debris, defying the basic laws of physics. Commander Shin Do-hyun's voice joined the conversation from his position near Jupiter. Council fleet, you are now completely surrounded. We have ships positioned throughout this system and beyond. Any attempt to flee will be prevented. What do you want? Velkoth finally asked, his voice much quieter than before. President Choi reappeared on the communication screens. His expression was calm, but his eyes were cold as space itself. Justice, Admiral. We want justice for every species you have murdered. We want freedom for every civilization you have oppressed. We want an end to the Council's reign of terror. You cannot be serious. The Council maintains order in the galaxy. Without us, there would be chaos. Without you, President Choi replied, there would be freedom. The galaxy doesn't need your kind of order. It needs the chance to grow and develop without fear. Captain Moon Jae-sung's voice came from another direction as his ship moved into position. Admiral, we should inform you that we have already made contact with 47 oppressed species within Council space. Many of them have been secretly armed with human technology. Your empire is falling apart even as we speak. This was the news that Velkoth had been dreading. Reports had been coming in for days about rebellions breaking out across Council territory. Species that had been quiet for centuries were suddenly fighting back with weapons and tactics that Council forces couldn't counter. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving surrender requests from 12 Council member species. They're asking for human protection. And we're receiving others kinds of messages too, the tactical officer added grimly. Reports of battles throughout Council space. It appears that several species are refusing to surrender and are fighting human forces. President Choi nodded. We offered every Council species the same choice we are offering you, Admiral. Join us in building a better galaxy, or be treated as enemies of freedom. Some chose wisdom. Others chose to fight. Battle Group Commander Im Ha-yoon's voice carried the weight of recent combat experience. The ones who chose to fight learned that human mercy has limits. We don't want to destroy civilizations, but we will defend ourselves and our allies with whatever force is necessary. Velkoth looked around his bridge at his crew. Many of them were young officers who had never seen real combat. They had joined the Council fleet believing they were keeping peace in the galaxy. Now they were learning that the peace had been built on mountains of corpses. "What happens to us if we surrender?" he asked quietly. "You will be taken to a neutral world where you will stand trial for your crimes," President Choi replied. "Those who cooperated in genocide will face justice. Those who are following orders without knowledge of the truth will be given the chance to help build something better." "And if we refuse?" Admiral Park's voice answered from the Aegis Prime. "Then you will discover that humanity fights much better than the Council ever imagined." "The choice is yours, Admiral. But choose quickly. We have a galaxy to liberate, and you're either with us or against us." Velkoth looked at the screens showing the evidence of Council crimes, then at the impossible human fleet surrounding his forces. In 30 days, these primitives had not only prepared to fight the most powerful empire in the galaxy, but had turned the Council's own oppressed subjects against them. For the first time in his long life, the Council Admiral realized he was facing an enemy that was truly superior. Not in weapons or numbers, but in something far more dangerous: the absolute certainty that they were fighting for justice. 6 months after the Council fleet surrendered in Earth's solar system, President Choi Min-ho stood before the largest gathering of alien species in galactic history. The first galactic assembly was being held on Kepler Station, a neutral world that had been chosen specifically because it had no connection to either human or Council territory. The Great Hall was filled with representatives from over 300 different species. Some had been Council members who had surrendered immediately when they learned the truth about their government's crimes. Others were species that had been hidden or oppressed for centuries, finally free to speak for themselves. A few were completely new to galactic politics, having been contacted by human exploration teams in the months since the Council's fall. 6 months ago, President Choi began, his words being translated into hundreds of different languages. Humanity received what the Galactic Council called a final warning. They demanded that we abandon our colonies, surrender our technology, and submit to their rule. The hall was completely silent. Everyone knew this story, but hearing it from the human leader himself was different. Today, we gather not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals working to build something the galaxy has never seen before: true freedom for every species to choose their own path among the stars. In the back of the hall, Admiral Park Woo-jin watched the proceedings with quiet satisfaction. The man who had first received the Council's ultimatum was now commanding the Terran Guardian fleet. Humanity's promise to protect any species that chose freedom over oppression. The results of humanity's war against the Council had exceeded everyone's expectations. Some Council species had fought desperately, refusing to believe that their empire could fall. Battle Group Commander Im Ha-yoon had led the human forces in these conflicts, demonstrating that humanity's mercy had limits, but their military capabilities seemed to have none. The war had lasted only 3 months. Council forces that had ruled the galaxy for millennia found themselves unable to counter human tactics that seemed to ignore the basic rules of warfare. Human ships appeared and disappeared at will. Human technology disrupted Council systems in ways that should have been impossible. Most importantly, human intelligence networks had turned the Council's own subjects against them. "The war is over," President Choi continued, "but our work is just beginning. We face the challenge of building a galactic community based on cooperation instead of domination, on freedom instead of fear." Dr. Kwon Soon-hwa, humanity's new Director of Diplomatic Relations, had spent months working with representatives from dozens of species to create the framework for this new galactic order. The principles were simple but revolutionary. Every species had the right to develop at their own pace. No species could be forced to submit to another's rule, and conflicts would be resolved through negotiation rather than force. "Of course," President Choi said with a slight smile, "we understand that not everyone will agree with these principles. Some species prefer the old ways of ruling through strength and fear. They are free to continue those practices in their own territory, but they will not be allowed to impose them on others." This was humanity's promise, and threat rolled into one. Species that wanted to live peacefully were welcome to join the new galactic community. Those that preferred conquest and domination would find themselves facing the Terran Guardian fleet. Captain Moon Jae-sung had discovered during the war that humanity's reputation for being dangerous primitives had actually helped them. Many Council species had fought expecting to face crude weapons and simple tactics. Instead, they encountered technology that seemed almost magical, and strategies that adapted faster than they could counter. The Council's former territory was now divided among dozens of free species, each governing themselves according to their own values and traditions. Human administrators like Governor Li Sang-min were helping with the transition, but only as advisors. Humanity had made it clear that they had no interest in replacing the Council as galactic rulers. Admiral Sung Ji-hae had been instrumental in organizing the new defense networks. The Terran Guardian fleet was now working with ships from 40 different species, creating a military force that was both powerful enough to maintain peace and diverse enough to represent the entire galactic community. "We have received reports," President Choi announced, "that some former Council leaders are attempting to rebuild their empire in the outer regions of the galaxy. I want to be very clear about humanity's position on this matter." The hall grew even quieter as delegates leaned forward to hear every word. Any attempt to recreate the Council's system of oppression will be met with immediate and overwhelming force. We did not fight a war to free the galaxy, only to allow tyranny to rebuild itself in the shadows. This was not an empty threat. Human intelligence networks, led by Director Oh Seung-hwan, had expanded throughout the galaxy. The same stealth technology that had allowed humans to spy on the Council was now being used to monitor potential threats to galactic freedom. Dr. Kim So-ra had established research stations throughout former Council space, working with alien scientists to develop new technologies for peaceful purposes. The quantum communication systems that had given humanity such an advantage in the war were now being shared with allied species, creating an information network that spanned the galaxy. The transformation hadn't been without challenges. Some species that had been oppressed for centuries struggled to govern themselves without Council oversight. Others had difficulty trusting that humanity wouldn't eventually become as controlling as the Council had been. Engineer Bae Jun-ho had led the effort to share human technology with allied species, but carefully and gradually, the phase shift drives and quantum communication systems were too powerful to give to everyone immediately. Humanity was learning that with great power came the responsibility to use it wisely. "I know that many of you are concerned about humanity's military capabilities," President Choi said, addressing the fear that many delegates felt but few had spoken aloud. "You wonder if we will eventually become what we fought against." He paused, looking around the hall at the hundreds of different faces representing hundreds of different worlds. "I cannot promise that humanity will never make mistakes. I cannot promise that we will always make the right choices. But I can promise this: we will never use our power to deny other species the right to choose their own destiny." Captain Lim Da-eun, now commanding the exploration ship New Horizon, had been leading humanity's efforts to make contact with species beyond former Council territory. The galaxy was much larger than anyone had realized, with thousands of civilizations that had remained hidden during the Council's reign. Many were now emerging, curious about the species that had ended 3,000 years of oppression. The most important change was happening in the attitudes of the younger generations across the galaxy. Species that had grown up under Council rule were learning what it meant to dream of futures their governments hadn't planned for them. Children who had been taught that their species was naturally inferior were discovering that they could achieve anything they set their minds to. Professor Nam Hee-jin had established the Galactic Technology Exchange, where species could share scientific discoveries and learn from each other without fear that their knowledge would be used against them. The rate of technological advancement across the galaxy had increased dramatically once species were free to cooperate, instead of competing for Council approval. In closing, President Choi said, "I want to return to where this all began." The Council gave humanity a final warning. They told us to submit or face destruction. They expected us to choose submission. He smiled, and for the first time since beginning his speech, his expression was warm instead of serious. "Instead, we chose a third option. We chose to build something better." Today, every species in this hall has that same choice. You can cling to the old ways of fear and domination, or you can join us in creating a galaxy where every civilization is free to reach for the stars. The applause that followed lasted for nearly 10 minutes. When it finally died down, President Choi made one final announcement. "The Terran Guardian fleet will continue to patrol galactic space, protecting the freedom we have all fought to achieve. But our ultimate goal is to make our services unnecessary. We look forward to the day when every species is strong enough to defend itself and wise enough to choose peace over war. As the assembly concluded and delegates began to depart, Admiral Park found himself standing with Dr. Kim So-ra on the station's observation deck, looking out at the stars. Ships from dozens of different species were preparing to return to their homeworlds, carrying news of the new galactic order. "Do you think it will work?" Dr. Kim asked. "Can we really build a galaxy based on freedom instead of fear?" Admiral Park was quiet for a moment, thinking about everything that had happened since that crystalline message pod had appeared on Aegis Prime 6 months ago. The Council had intended their final warning to be humanity's last chance to submit. Instead, it had become their own final mistake. The Council ruled for 3,000 years by convincing everyone that peace required oppression, he said finally. "We've proven that's not true. Whether our way works in the long term, I suppose we'll find out together."